day 4 and the final day of the 2020 online wheat tour that we've been doing. If you've just joined us today, the Wheat Quality Council wasn't able to do their tour this year because of the COVID pandemic. So what we're trying to do this year is just give a spotlight of what the crop is right now. And we're doing a sampling across the state, doing some yield sampling with some great volunteers that we have. So let me get started sharing the screen here, and we'll get right into the program. It should be a relatively short program today. We're going to just give some basic reports from the field, show you what we saw today, and then we'll get to the numbers when we finish. As usual, if you have questions for any of us, for the speakers we're about to have, please submit those through the chat line, and we'll try to get answers to those as we go along here. So this is the agenda for today. We'll get a wheat report on central and south central Kansas. Dave Green with the Wheat Quality Council was traveling around today, as well as Romulo with K-State was out and about again today. So we'll hear about what they saw, and then we'll present some final numbers and take some questions. So this is what day 3 was. We covered the central and south central cropping districts, and I failed to put on here, but we also did get some samples in from southeast Kansas, quite a few acres of wheat in southeast Kansas, so we're fortunate to get a report from that part of the state also. Just a little bit of a reminder of what a big issue was in the central part of the state. So if you're looking at the central and south central cropping district, is the freeze events that we had in central Kansas. So that's one thing we'll be listening for today and looking for today as we get these field reports. Ultimately what was the impact of that freeze and what the condition of the wheat is now. It did rain in central Kansas today. This was a picture of the radar at noon today. So getting rain, and there is quite a bit of rain in the forecast for central Kansas. Unfortunately, it's probably not going to push too much into the western part of the state. If you were with us yesterday, you saw that southwest, west central Kansas, very dry, pretty severe drought out there. And hopefully they will pick up a little bit of rain here in the next few days. Here are a few slides that we got submitted to us. This is from one of our board members in McPherson County, which is right in the middle of the state in central Kansas. As you can see, they got a nice bit of rain already in the last 24 hours, and the field on the right looks like a really nice field of wheat, nice thick field with a lot of big heads in there. So it's really ideal conditions for wheat right now in central Kansas. But there is some disease pressure that we'll have to take into account. On the left here is a picture from Lincoln County in central Kansas. Again, a nice looking field. It's at the flowering stage there, no freeze damage. It had an estimate through our formula of 50 bushels per acre. In Barber County in south central Kansas on the right, another very nice looking field that has an estimate of 81 bushels per acre. And here in Rush County in central Kansas, there was a little bit more drought stress on the field on the left. That picture there, that field was estimated at 56 bushels per acre. But on the right, you can see in Russell County in central Kansas, stripe rust and freeze damage. And that stripe rust is circled there in the red. That's on the upper leaves of the wheat plant. So that is certainly a concern that interferes with the photosynthesis on those leaves, which is what's being used to fill the kernels in the head right now. So I'm sure Romulo and we'll talk a little bit more about the stripe rust situation. So our speaker lineup is Dave Green, again with the Wheat Quality Council. Dave is the executive director of the Wheat Quality Council. Romulo Lolato with K-State Research and Extension, who's been a real trooper out in the field, putting on a lot of miles this week. And I am going to turn it over to our CEO of Kansas Wheat, Justin Gilpin. So go ahead, Justin.
All right, well, thank you, Aaron. You've certainly done a really good job this week. I'd like to take a second real quick just to thank all the Kansas Wheat staff for all they've been putting into this week. Julie, who's been taking care of the office nonstop since this situation really began. Taylor was one of the ones out traveling the state, taking in samples, and so appreciate that. But especially Marcia and Aaron for planning and executing the agenda and the Zoom meetings that I think have gone all very, very well. Do want to thank you to the Kansas Department of Agriculture for their support, and certainly Kansas State University for all the time and expertise that they've made available for this event. And lastly, to all of our board members for their support in wanting to do this virtual tour and participating and sending in estimates in their farms and their areas. That really made it all possible. So at the risk of giving up my age, this would have been my 20th annual Wheat Quality Tour, Dave, and so to attend. So I was like a lot of people and was disappointed when we weren't able to do the Wheat Quality Council Tour this year. You know, looking back on it, maybe it's somewhat fitting with the passing of a longtime Quality Council exec, tour organizer Ben Hancock, that maybe we did take a year off in his memory. I'm sure that's how he would claim it anyway. But in place of it, you know, our Kansas Wheat board members and others were asking the question: is there something we could do in its place or substitute this year? You know, ironically, the concept of a virtual wheat tour came up during a Zoom meeting. As things transpired, here we are, and it's been a challenging week and how it's all come together. But even with a few glitches here and there, it's gone off even better probably than a lot of us had expected. So big thanks to everybody who made that possible. So we're fortunate to have Dave Green, executive of the Wheat Quality Council, with us here. Dave is the one who had to make the difficult decision in canceling this year's tour. Dave certainly no rookie to the tour, chose the day that he would be out and do the wheat fields and yield calculations. He did pick the day to go see the best wheat, so I think he probably knew what he was doing there. He misjudged a little bit that he would be actually out in the rain. So I actually enjoyed seeing you having to get out in the rain, Dave. He did get to see some good wheat, so I'm going to ask him a little bit about the wheat he saw through Central Kansas today. And Dave, if you could maybe spend a little bit of time and talking for those that are on the Zoom call that maybe aren't as familiar with who the Wheat Quality Council is, or how the Wheat Quality Council annual tour historically has happened, and then a little bit of the difference between that tour being replaced a little bit or mimicked this year by the virtual. So I'll turn this around to Dave.
Well, thanks, Justin. A little bit about the Wheat Quality Council and it's part of the tour. The Wheat Quality Council is actually designed to work with plant breeders and breeding companies to improve the quality of the wheat crop. And so as millers and bakers, they're involved with the growers and the plant breeders to try to evaluate the new varieties that are coming down the pike to make sure that they're meeting the needs of the entire industry. Historically, in the 1960s, the millers used to bring the bakers out once a year for more of a field days, where they would show them the new varieties in the field, bring them out on the train from New York City, show them what the combines looked like, and kind of just had a 3-day visit to show them what was going on with the industry. When the Russians started buying grain in the 70s, things became more serious, and everybody was very much more interested in when is this crop going to be harvested, what's the protein content going to be, are there any disease problems, and the wheat tour kind of gradually formed into a more sophisticated, maybe a more formal group that it is today. And basically nowadays we follow the same routes. We take 6 different routes across Kansas for 3 days so we can compare this year's data to last year's. We run probably 20 carloads of people, so we're somewhere between 80 and 100 people every year, so we usually have much more people. And then we're taking field samples every 10 miles, every 10 or 15 miles. We're getting in a field and running measurements. So at the end of the day, we're looking at several hundred measurements of fields during the course of the tour, that it's easy to manipulate the data and to average it out and to show what kind of a high and low and average and compared to last year that the crop ends up. So it's a little different this year. We just obviously couldn't do that for about 30 different reasons. We couldn't keep people together for this, so we had to cancel. But I certainly was anxious to get out in some wheat fields and see this crop and take a look at it. I left Kansas City today. I really covered just 5 counties. I went to Abilene and started working We went south actually to Newton through Marion County, went across into Harvey County, up through McPherson, Salina, and then worked my way back here. So we made, I think, 8 stops. Our average was 53 something bushels an acre. We thought the crop that I saw was very good. We did not find disease. We did not find freeze damage. And as Justin said, we were in the rain most of the day, very hard rain. So it was very difficult getting out in the fields, and certainly the crops all but made in those areas. We saw some fields that were just heading. Most of it was flowering. Some of it was filling kernels. So it's well on its way in the 5 counties that I was at, and thought things looked very good. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Justin, you've been out and about too. Did you want to make any comments on what you saw?
I think Dave did a nice job. I know Romulo is going to go through it pretty good. Also, I was one of the ones that did go through parts of southeast Kansas. Probably one thing that we didn't talk about a lot. We really talked a lot about the drought in southwest Kansas, but there really is a lot of waterlogged field and washed out, especially you get south of Manhattan over into Lyon County, Emporia, Coffee County areas, and then down into the southeast corner of Kansas. There isn't as much wheat grown there, but some of that wheat's struggling from almost having too much water. But some of the wheat that's in those areas that is sitting on a little bit higher ground looks pretty good. Certainly saw as we went through the south central part of the state and up into the central part of the state, certainly did see better yield, especially after coming through north central, seeing the drought stress where the crop was in maturity, over to the northwest, and then through the west central and southwest, coming into that south central and central. It really shows that there's more than just variability across the state. It almost looked like two different wheat areas. So, and then seeing the rain that came today, getting a little wet. It's and Romulo will touch on this a little bit more, but the rain that we are getting is coming at a beneficial time for that central corridor. I know Romulo is going to talk also a little bit about the genetics that we have in this wheat and how things have responded since the freeze. I think it is a real testament to the genetics and the varieties we have available to some of our growers right now, and being able to be out there and see that firsthand and see how the crop has been able to hold on in areas and then be able to respond when given the right temperature and the right moisture. It really is a testament to the genetics and the varieties that we have out there in place. We probably don't talk about that enough. But I think with that, Aaron, I'll turn it over to Romulo.
Yeah, please do. And Romulo, again, a big thanks to you for all the miles you put on this week. You probably, hopefully you kept a track of how many miles, but we're fortunate to have you in the state and appreciate the expertise you shared with us all week. So go ahead and give us your final report.
That sounds good. Well, there's a little feedback here. Just a second. Okay, excellent. Yeah, well, thank you, Aaron. Thanks, Justin and Dave as well for your report there. As both of them already mentioned, so the focus today was really central Kansas and south central Kansas. So in that region in central Kansas, starting in about Russell County, going west to Ellis County, south to Rush, and then east again back into Barton and Ellsworth County, really in that central portion of the state. I did a total of 14 stops there. The yield range was from 21 to 83 bushels per acre, so a pretty large range over there. Mostly of those 21s, they were pretty drought stress and freeze damage as well. So quite a bit of variability there, field to field variability. Also a trend that as we headed west towards western Ellis County, western Rush County, things were a little bit rougher as well, mostly because they got less precipitation than what we did in the central part. Now, it's important to remember as well that even in that central part, Ellsworth, we were going through some levels of drought stress after that freeze that was kind of concerning as well. So because of that, and that's where we were more concerned with freeze, we also saw a few fields in Barton County. Specifically, I put a tweet out showing the difference between the heads of the tillers that survived the freeze and then tillers that were being formed after the freeze. So many of those fields that had a pretty severe freeze damage, they were looking pretty thin. With that, there was a lot of weeds coming out on them as well. And as we looked into the canopy, there was a lot of new tillers, but those heads were actually very small. So again, on the lower portions, fields that were lower in the landscape there, we were seeing quite a bit of freeze damage in that Barton County region. But other than that, a very good potential. As Dave mentioned there, very good potential. Field after field, we're doing some estimates of about 45, 55 bushels per acre. So the average from those 14 estimates that I did was 52 bushels per acre. Again, a big concern in that region is stripe rust. So in several of the fields that we were walking in was finding stripe rust, especially in that central portion, like Ellsworth County, Barton County as well. Going south from there, right in the south central part of the state, I visited the counties of Pawnee County and then down to Kiowa. Then I went east back to Pratt and Reno and so on back to Manhattan here, right? So in that portion, which will be kind of the northwest part of the south central region of Kansas, right? So I didn't go as far south as Sumner County this week. I've been there last week, but not this week. So that region, again, a very good yield potential, right? I believe in that south central part of the state, we got more precipitation, as Dave was mentioning here before as well. But what was very consistent, again, was stripe rust. I even took some pictures there that after going into one of those fields, I almost didn't feel like going into another one because of the level of stripe rust that I was finding in some of those canopies, where the mid canopy was gone and a large portion of the upper canopy was gone as well. So yield potential was good. We did estimates anywhere from 35 to about 76 bushels per acre. That was the range in the south central part of the state, averaging 56 bushels per acre on these stops that I did. So I think there is a very good potential there. But stripe rust is really becoming a concern. And the problem there is that really we are getting already past where our fungicide application window is. So in many of those fields in that region, they are already past flowering, and then we don't have the window to spray fungicide anymore. So if that's the case, right, some of those fields that didn't get fungicide, they can actually get a pretty big yield hit due to that pressure of stripe rust. We're estimating now 56 bushels per acre, but given the pressure of stripe rust, that can really bring those yields down. We can see anywhere from 10 up to 20% or more yield loss, depending on the level of severity of stripe rust. Justin mentioned the value of genetics, right? And there is a huge investment in breeding programs within K-State and private as well. And that's a war that they fight constantly against diseases, right? And as we come up with materials that are better adapted against some of these diseases, nature does its part and overcome that as well. So every year we need to do several estimates of what varieties are resistant or not to stripe rust, and that can change on a yearly basis. More recently here, it seems like from last year to this year, there seems that we saw some varieties that used to be resistant to stripe rust really breaking that down and a little bit more susceptible as well. So growers here need to be aware of that. They need to be on top of their variety resistant to fungicide, to stripe rust, and in case they are not resistant, this year will be a year that seems like, especially in central Kansas, it would be worth to consider a fungicide application to protect whatever potential is there. The caveat there are fields that are very drought stressed in the western part of the state. Probably we don't want to invest anymore on those fields, so a more challenging decision out there. Aaron, I believe that's an overview of what I saw in central Kansas and south central Kansas. Of course, if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Okay, thanks, Romulo, again. And folks, if you have any questions you have, just please submit those to Romulo in the chat here, and we'll try to try to get those answered. I guess one question here, Romlo, is, how do farmers determine whether it makes sense to spray rust anymore? Obviously, the stage of the plant has to do something with that, but there's a financial consideration too. It's a race between the stripe rust and filling out the grain head, I guess.
Yeah, so definitely what we recommend within K-State, right, there are three main things that we need to be looking for. One is the level of stripe rust, right? If stripe rust is present or not. Two is where is it present? Is it only on the lower leaves, or is it moving to the upper part of the canopy, right? And then third is the variety resistance, right? And then the environmental conditions. So those two first ones, they are the presence of stripe rust and intensity, the environmental conditions, if they're conducive or not, and the level of tolerance of that variety. So and of course, you have the yield potential is the first thing that comes first. You have the yield potential to be protected by a footer fungicide, right? Then you have those other three layers that we're talking about. Again, many growers select varieties that are resistant or at least tolerant to stripe rust, and that in many years can be worth a ton, right? Many varieties don't even show a response to fungicide many times because of their resistance. But sometimes when we have conditions that are very conducive, especially those varieties that are more susceptible, that's where the growers see the biggest bang for their buck on a fungicide application. So I guess, let me know if that doesn't answer the question, but again, yield potential being number one, right? If the yield potential is there, should be protected, and then variety tolerance to the disease and price of the fungicide as well, environmental conditions.
Yeah, great answer. So one more question for you, Romlo, that you've been around the entire state now. What do you think about abandonment? Is it more or less than you normally see? I know it's a very hard thing to gauge.
Yes, that's a very hard one, Aaron. And just with visual estimates like this is kind of difficult to tell. I think we're going to be at least average or above average this year because of the potential of the crop that I was seeing out there. So at least average or above average. As far as a specific number, I'm probably not going to give you one there. Because I really I'm not sure where that will be, but I'll believe above average because the western portion of the state, southwest, very compromised, the potential out there. The crop many times is very short. And as I mentioned yesterday, I was surprised with some fields that were not abandoned up to now because their potential, sometimes we're measuring 10, 15 bushels per acre there or less. And seems like the crop was still going. But, within a production system, growers, they have to consider many things, right? Did they apply a herbicide in that crop and that restricts their rotation? So in that case, it doesn't even make sense to abandon that crop because they cannot go directly to a summer crop. Or issues with the amount of moisture that they have in the profile. Perhaps they don't have enough moisture there to go to a summer crop. So many things that they consider in that abandonment or not. So there are many things at play there. I think it's going to be above average based on the amount of fields that I saw throughout the state and also based on the conditions of the crop in further west Kansas. So that'll be my answer. Probably slightly above average there.
Okay. Thank you, Romlo. Let's take a look then. I think we're ready to get into the numbers here. So let's take a look at the numbers today for South Central and Central Kansas. So the yield range in South Central Kansas was from 21 to 83 bushels an acre, and our yield average for South Central Kansas was 49.5 or 50 bushels per acre. The yield range in Central Kansas was 20 to 87. Am I not? Sorry, I guess I'm not sharing my screen with you all. Let me try that again. Okay, how's that? I'll have Zoom figured out when we're all done with this. Okay, here are the numbers again. South Central Kansas yield range and an average of 49.5 bushels per acre. The yield range in Central Kansas, pretty similar, the low of 20 and a high of 87. And that puts the yield average in Central Kansas at 47.6 bushels per acre. And we did get some reports in from Eastern Kansas, didn't do a range on that, but it turned out to be about an average of 46 bushels per acre. And again, the USDA Kansas average was 47 bushels per acre. So we'll take a look at, if we took our yield average from this tour for all of the cropping districts and we average them together, we come up with a 3-day average of 44.5 bushels per acre. And again, that compares to the USDA number of about 47 bushels per acre. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Justin. And Justin, when you're ready for that next slide, just let me know.
All right. Nice job, Aaron. It's been great seeing all this come together, and appreciate you giving that data. So in the spirit of past tours, we are going to issue a final estimate for the state of Kansas. Be the first ever for a virtual wheat tour to be come out of the Kansas Wheat Office final estimate. I guess we have it a little bit easy on us because the USDA has already put out a number. I think he's leaving it on the screen. He's done seeing me. We do appreciate our friends earlier in this week giving a Oklahoma, Colorado, Nebraska number, sharing their thoughts and estimates. It is a little bit unique when not being able to compare the numbers from this year's tour and a final estimate to past tours or historical data like you can with the traditional Wheat Quality Council tour. And it's different than that. This is a little bit later than how the wheat tour would normally be. So we saw the crop at a little bit different stage. So it's a little bit closer to harvest time, what makes it a little bit different. So our final number today, it's been made in consultation with all the experts that's been involved with this tour, their observations, yield calculations, taking all that into consideration, harvested acres.
I'll call you right back.
I think somebody's not muted, but you know, taking all that into consideration, harvested acres, attempting to weight the yield on the crop reporting districts past planting acreages. Our best estimate, we estimate the Kansas crop at 284 million bushels, 400,000 for the state of Kansas. So that it was using getting some feedback from somebody, but again, that's an estimate coming from the Kansas Wheat Office here in Manhattan after taking in all the data that everybody put into this week. So sure do appreciate that. Now, before I turn it back over to Aaron, I would like just to say, you know, the wheat industry, it's worldwide, maybe one of the most global industries in the world. But those of you involved in the wheat industry, in the wheat world, know that it's really a small world. We've appreciated the privilege to be able to share with all of you this week a snapshot in time, a virtual look into the Kansas wheat crop, sights and scenes of Kansas, and this year's crops and challenges and potential. So to all of you who have tuned into this, and Kansas farmers, our customers, industry partners, all the media and interested parties, we sure thank you. We hope that you found this useful and meaningful. And on behalf of the Kansas Wheat staff here, it certainly meant a lot to us to be able to share it all with you. So with that, I'll turn it over to Aaron one last time.
Okay, thanks a lot, Justin. And as usual, Marcia's going to have the video of this as well as the slides posted on our website here later this evening, probably. You're welcome to follow up any questions you have, and please remember we're a resource for you here at Kansas Wheat. But, thanks everybody for participating. Sorry for all the technical hiccups, but I think it worked out very well, and we hope to see you all down the road. Stay safe and healthy, and enjoy the wheat harvest. All right. Good night.